Here we go. Another podcast of Square Dance Callers Talking. Tonight, I have a U.S. Air Force veteran. He is a Callerlab member. He's a Board of Governors. He's on the marketing committee for Callerlab. He's an accredited caller coach. He is one of the leaders of Grand Square International. We'll talk about that too. He's a staff coach for the GSI. And he's also a national and international caller. Tonight, it is my honor to talk to Jack Pladdys. Jack, how are you, sir?
I'm doing good. That's quite an intro. Thank you.
Oh, absolutely, sir. I want to make sure I got everything in there. And like I said, we've known each other for a couple of years now.
Right.
And I really wanted to talk to you like this. We've got to spend some time at a few of the caller labs, and we've got to spend some time at some dances and things like that, and other little things. And man, I really like dancing to you. I like hearing you call. I've learned a lot from you in all the schools I've gone to, but I want tonight, this afternoon, to talk about you some. And just like I do with everybody, kind of tell me when you started square dancing, when you started taking lessons, and how'd that all start for you? Where were you?
Oh, wow. That goes all the way back to about 1980. Okay. I had just arrived to Okinawa, Japan, and my wife at the time and I wanted to do something other than just hang out with the guys in the squadron at Kadena Air Base, and so we were in the commissary getting some goodies there. We were still living in temporary quarters at the time, and we saw the flyer for square dancing. Come learn square dancing.
Okay.
Be honest with you, I wasn't really big into doing that. It was not on my radar. I wanted to play softball and bowl and I was 25 years old at the time. No, I wasn't. It wasn't in my wheelhouse at the time. So I pretty much did everything I could to avoid going to square dance lessons. Over in the overseas theaters, and those of you that are military listening to this, you'll understand what I'm talking about. We used to have this thing called the Armed Forces Radio and Television Network. Mm-hmm. So everybody that got TV shows in the U.S., we would get them 2 or 3 weeks later. And if they were the mini series that came out, they would go on 5 nights in a row rather than 5 weeks in a row or something like that. Well, I actually sat down and watched the first 2 episodes of Roots, if you remember when that came out.
I saw it.
Yeah, just so I could watch the 3rd episode and skip square dance lessons. I mean, that's how bad I didn't want to do it.
Okay.
But so be it. I made it through the square dance lessons, and this was in actually the lessons were on Kadena Air Base in Okinawa. But I was living on a Marine camp in government housing, and there was a club on the Marine camp, and there was a club on Kadena Air Base. The Geckos were on Kadena Air Base, and the Red Hots were on Camp Butler. Okay. Well, we started dancing. Camp Butler, the caller was a Marine. Many of you might remember him. He came back to the U.S. and became a very famous round dance cure. Bob Malthouse was the caller. I'm sure some of the people listening will remember him. And but he got rotated off the island and moved on. We had a Japanese caller that called for the Japanese club at the time, but he was also an attorney, and he really didn't have time to take on the 2 clubs on the military basis. So over in that kind of theater, if you're standing on the sidelines and you know how to tap your feet in time with the music, you generally become the next caller. And everybody will say, okay, you be our caller now. Well, the clubs had their own records. They had a box of about 45 records and a little old Hilton and a big Hilton speaker. And so they told me to take it home. That was on Actually, that was on June 11th of 1982. And on June 22nd, 11 days later, I called my first square dance.
Okay.
I crammed for 2 weeks before that. My daughter had just been born a month earlier. So what I would do is every day I'd get home from work, I would put her in one arm, and I would put a mic in the other, and I would sit there for hours each night just practicing. I would practice singing calls, and I would use the singing call figures to practice patter. You know, I had no training, and there was nobody there to tell me how to do this thing. All I had was 45 records, and I used them all too. Let me tell you, a lot of chaparrals, a lot of rhythms, a lot of ESPs, and Blue Stars. So anyway, so this went on for a couple of months. I called my first dance, but I would sit down, and we talk about this in the schools. I would sit down and I'd write my choreography. I didn't know anything about modules or get outs or get ins or any of that stuff. I would just sit down and write the choreography based on the cue sheets on the singing call figures.
Okay.
Well, I was doing this for a couple months, and you know, having a good time at it. And we have 3-4 squares at our clubs over there. Well, every time I would call, I would get excited. I'd look up so I could see what the dancers were doing. I look down at my paper, and I'm sure you've been through this too.
Yep, absolutely.
Couldn't find my place. Lost my place. I screwed everything up. So it was like, okay, everybody run home and let's start this all over.
Yeah.
Well, this went on for about 3 months. It was middle of August sometime, and in 1982, and I was getting frustrated. I said, you know what? I got to figure out a better way to do this thing.
Right.
And so we went home after a dance one night, and I went up to the kitchen table, and I made me some checkers out of paper, and I told myself, I'm going to sit here at this table as long as it takes to where I can learn how to call without having to read.
Gotcha.
So in my mind, 7 hours later, it was about 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. In my mind, I thought I invented sight calling.
Yeah,
I had
makes
nothing
sense.
else. Yeah, there was nobody else. I invented sight calling. I invented a sight resolution method, and I just thought I was, you know, the big dog at that time, you know. And I couldn't wait to the next dance. And next dance, I employed all that stuff that I taught myself that night, and it worked out fantastic. And you know, so I started doing this sight calling, a sight resolution, and using some of this written stuff. At the time, I didn't know it was called modules, but I knew it worked, and that's what a module is, right? A module is something that starts from a known beginning formation to a known ending formation.
Wow.
Yep, that all worked for me, and I had this sight resolution thing going on, and I thought it was cool. A month later, started a lesson class at the USO on Cadena, and we had about 8 squares in that lesson class, and it was fantastic. Had a great time, and everything was going along, and started getting the American Square Dance magazine and the sets in order and all that, and started reading stuff and using modules from there and employing my sight resolutions and really working hard all through that year. And I thought, man, I can't wait to get back and meet some other square dance callers and tell them what they can do, make it easier. So at that time, I thought I was a caller coach already. So long story, make it short. So later that following year, the summer of 1983, I rotated out, reassigned to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Dayton, Ohio, and came back to the U.S. and then I started meeting other callers and getting material and finding books that I can buy and everything. And I bought this one book by Jack Pladdys, and he had this sight resolution method in that book, and it was my sight resolution.
Yours? Okay.
And I thought, hey, wait a minute, I invented that. As I found out, I did not invent it, but it really helped me develop as a caller because man, I just work hard to get there. The guys these days have so many resources, with the internet,
all the
websites that we've got and things we can do. Well, back in the early 80s, we didn't have all that, so it was really nice to get back to the States and get some written material, meet some callers, and start getting some really good direction. Got back.
I can't believe you were doing that without you. You didn't put checkers in until a couple of months later. You were writing this stuff. Great goodness, that you're just writing it up, just thinking about it. That's impressive.
That's all I was doing. I didn't know what checkers were. I had to sit down and I took paper and I cut paper into you know, 8 people and you know, circles for the girls and squares for the boys and I went at it and didn't realize that was what checkers really were.
Yeah. Gosh, I mean,
Yeah.
now you've got computer programs that'll do it all, and you don't have to move a thing.
Yeah, I think it made me a better caller.
Oh, absolutely. Yes, sir.
You know, I didn't get, I don't want to say handed anything, but I had to sit there and, you know, and develop it myself and, you know, so it reinforced everything that I was doing. Everything I did went on paper and so I you know, I really, I look back on that and I really appreciate that first year that I really studied hard and worked hard, you know, and didn't realize how hard I was working until later. Got into, and so they're in 1983, I moved to Wright-Patterson, and that's where I met a fellow named Chuck Myers.
Okay.
He's no longer with us, but Chuck became my mentor, and Chuck was just fantastic. He, when he passed away, he was living in Pensacola, Florida, but you know, he was a fantastic caller, and he took me under his wing, and I, you know, he became my mentor, and he took me places and taught me things that I never thought was even possible in square dancing. You know, Chuck always told me, he said, for every 10 things you remember, you're going to forget 10 things, you know, so keep writing them down and all that kind of stuff. And so things worked out pretty good. You know, he's the one that got me going and progressed. And I stayed in Ohio until 1990 when I reassigned to Hill Air Force Base in Utah. And by this time, my college career was starting to blossom a little bit. I got on Chicago Country Records and did a few records for Jack Berg and his team, and met some really great callers, you know, being with Chicago Country Records, Bob Pointer, Kurt Graffett, you know, Jack Berg, just to name a few. They're just fantastic callers, and developed a really nice network of callers through the music industry. And then when I moved to Utah, I met Al Horn, who lived in Utah. He used to be the owner and producer of all the you know, Mountain and Prairie and those.
I've heard of those.
Yep. And I did a song for him on Desert while I was in Utah, and found another caller to kind of be my mentor, Craig Satterthwaite, and he's still out there calling, and he's the one that kind of got me started calling advanced and taught me how to dance advanced, and then pretty much got started calling advanced from him. So he was the second big mentor. In 1992, moved back to Ohio, where by this time Chuck was about ready to retire and moved down to Mobile, Alabama, and he was living down there. And I was starting to, you know, spread my wings pretty good. You know, I was calling 4 or 5 clubs in the local area, and was starting to travel, you know, 200-300 miles. I thought I was somebody if I went 200 miles. Yeah. It was like, holy crap. Yeah. I go 200 miles and make $100, and I thought I was the greatest thing in the world.
Yes, sir. I know that feeling. Yes, sir.
Yeah. And progressed, you know, through the 90s, and that's when I started getting involved in Callerlab and whatnot. But the best thing that ever happened to me is I met my current wife, Sherry, in 1993, and we got married in 1995, and you know, she's the one that's just, you know, giving me all the motivation I need to continue on and try to be the best I am. So
that's fantastic.
To have somebody that's standing behind you and you know, standing beside you, if you will. But Sherry's the greatest, and a lot of people love her, and a lot of people think that if it wasn't for her, I wouldn't be anywhere. And I kind of believe that.
Yeah. Okay.
I kind of believe that.
Oh my gosh! I mean, that's such a good story.
Yeah, there's a whole lot more behind it, but that's just the basic parts of it, and it was quite a ride. And I'll tell you, the next phase, let me, if I can just continue on that little timeline.
Absolutely. Go ahead.
So in the early to mid 90s, when I first came back to Ohio, I met another caller that actually I'd already known him, but got close to him. His name was Jerry Helt, and be very, very famous caller. He's not with us anymore either, but he he's worldwide famous, and he was just a fantastic caller at the lower levels. The basic, and he had a group that where he would call regularly once a week that they wouldn't go past 20 basics, and he'd have 15 squares every week and that kind of thing. And so I learned from the bottom end also. And then, but I guess one of the biggest things that really made a major change in the direction of my calling, because by this time, by the late 90s, I was, becoming a pretty established caller. Was considered a very good regional caller, and stretching out and doing some things, across the country here and there, but not a lot. But in the late 90s, my relationship with Tony Oxidine and Jerry Story really blossomed.
Okay. And
Tony is the one that he came to me. Might have been the Louisville National, way back in 2010 or 29, something like that. I can't remember. He came to me and says, "You need to start letting me be a color coach." And by this time, I'd already been doing a few things, in the early 2000s, along the coaching lines and doing some mentoring of some of the callers in our local area, things like that. So then I went under Tony's wing and worked hard. It took about 6 or 7 years to really get your accreditation and get all the hours in, kind of thing. Yeah, it's quite a process. It's not something that happens overnight. It's you have to amass and document well over 200 plus hours of coaching and teaching. You got to do several full 40-hour schools and pass a pretty rigorous test to become a accredited coach. It's about 130 questions. You're only allowed to get like 2 wrong or something like that. And then oral exams. And let me tell you what, that oral exam was interesting. The guys that gave me my orals was Ken Latucci and John Jones. And let me tell you what, those are 2 guys that are big in the activity, and they know what they're talking about. And
absolutely.
They wanted to make sure I knew what I was talking about if I was going to be out there coaching all you young guys.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And we do appreciate it.
Yeah. And then over the years, Tony and I became best friends, and our wives are best friends, and we do a lot of stuff beyond square dancing now, and that's nice to do. But we work hard for square dancing, and we feel like it's really in our blood. It's what we do, and we're gonna do everything we can to make this activity nurture. I'm getting very involved in Callerlab now. Of course, like you said, I'm now on the board of governors. I'm the chairman of the marketing committee. I'm executive committee elect. After next week, I'll be officially on the executive committee. So you can add that to my resume there.
Okay, I'm doing it.
Yep. And it's just it's just going like crazy, and I'm hope I lead a good example. That's all I want to do. I want to be somebody that is doing the right thing and being a good ambassador to our activity.
Yes, sir.
And at the same time, having some fun, hanging out with guys like you. I know we've had some good times already.
Yes,
with drinking a couple of Diet Pepsis.
Yeah, it is definitely Diet Pepsis. I tell you, and we did. I had heard you and seen you because the difference, and with the story with your story of coming up through it, is unlike now some of the guys that have been in it for years. They have that story where you basically taught yourself up until you had a mentor. Me starting out, and some of the guys that I know that are, if you want to say in my class, not even age, because everybody starts at a different age. I immediately have a couple of callers around me that were like, hey, you should try this, and this is what a module is, and doing, so I had stuff. You're getting fed it. Here you go, try this.
Right.
And then with all the schools that you can go to now, and that's where I met you. I think it probably was at a GSI school first, and then just like I say, last year we got to spend a lot of time together, drink a lot of Diet Pepsi, Diet Coke. I'm from Georgia. It's Diet Coke from Georgia,
yeah.
and so at the campground at Pride and all that. So, and when I talk to you guys, I mean, it makes it so much easier for me. And, I like to think that I'd still be doing it if I didn't have all the support. And a lot of these guys that don't have all the support, but we have so much. I was telling them I've never, as a group of people go, men and women callers, I've never seen a more supportive group. I mean, I'm in law enforcement in the real world. I played sports growing up, and there was always somebody that was looking to take your spot.
Right.
In square dancing, I don't see that. I mean, I'm sure there's somebody out there, don't get me wrong. And you get a group of people together, you're going to have a bad apple in there. But on a whole, the square dancing community, and especially the callers, it's just like, hey, man, what can I do for you? Is there anything, you have any questions? Call me, do this, do that. Hey, maybe you want to go to this school next year just to check it out. I've picked up so much. Ken Ritucci also, I need to call and talk to that guy too. I've been to a couple of his schools. I went to the Northeast one. Phenomenal, and all the other stuff like that.
Yeah, so he's the chairman of our Caller Accreditation Committee right now.
Since you've seen both ends of it, teaching yourself, and then you're a accredited caller coach now. What advice do you have for somebody who's thinking about calling, or is just in their first year or two, just trying to make headway? Any kind of advice?
Well, sure. Like you said, one of the things we didn't have, and like I said, I started in the early 80s. One of the things we didn't have is we didn't have a lot of this resource, this college schools, the school at the National Square Dance Convention. Heck, I can go online right now and I can find a college school almost every month somewhere around the country now. And we've got 32, I think, might be changed, I don't know, but 32 accredited caller coaches through CallerLab. And every one of them works hard. They know their stuff. It doesn't make them any better than the next guy, but it validates what they've done. And they've worked hard to learn and be able to get things done correctly. So as a new caller, there's a couple things I'd recommend. First thing is find a mentor. Find somebody that you can tail along with. I think that's very important. Again, I did a lot of self-teaching that first year, but it really didn't start coming together until I found Chuck Myers and started. I'd go over to his house, 2-3 times a week. We didn't live far from each other, and we'd be pushing checkers and that kind of thing, and just talking square dancing and talking calling. I'd get in the car with him and go to a dance and just kind of watch what he does and believe it or not, a lot of the mannerisms that Chuck had, I still have.
Yep, I agree.
If any dancers from back then would come up to me, they say, "Hey, that's what Chuck used to say," or "That's how Chuck used to do it."
Yeah.
So that first mentor is going to make a lot. Now, here's the big thing about the schools and the accredited caller coaches and whatnot. You can get a mentor, but that doesn't necessarily mean your mentor is doing everything correctly. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Because a lot of our mentors were self-taught and learned from way back when we didn't have all the resources, and maybe some of the things they were doing was not correct. And so you start doing these things. Your mentor, you start doing what your mentor did. I was very fortunate. Chuck was doing a lot of things correctly. Very few things that you could find anything wrong with, because Chuck had the passion to become a very good caller. But there are some guys out there teaching guys that are maybe, doing some things that may not be correct, hand availability or flow or things like that.
Flow, yeah.
That's what you can get out of by going to these official schools. Learn what you can from your mentor, but actually go to some actual education sessions and schools as a new caller. If you got guys, here's one thing we used to do a lot in in Southern Ohio back in the early 80s and mid 80s is we had a club in Dayton. It was called the Dayton Square Dance Club. Imagine that. And all they did was hire, it was twice a month, and all they did was hire national callers, you know. And we had all those guys coming through. You had the Elmer Sheffield and the Tom Miller and the Tony Oxendine and the Jerry Story and the Larry Letson and everybody going through. And they would get hired and they'd call this club every other week. This is when there was a big traveling circuit for these full-time callers. So what we would do in our college association is we would get together and we would contact this guy and we say, hey, look, we'll pay you $100 and buy your breakfast if you do a 2-hour seminar on Saturday morning before you leave town.
Very nice. Okay.
And they ate that up. So we would get these national guys come in and we'd have a 2-hour college teaching seminar before they hit town and went on to their next gig. So we took advantage of that. There's not a big caller traveling circuit anymore like there used to be, in the 70s and the 80s and even the 90s. But there's still guys moving around and traveling, and especially these days, we're getting here and there and paying for a hotel room. Well, if you see somebody coming in town, get with your local association as the new caller and say, hey, let's try to get this guy to stick around for a few hours on the next morning before he leaves town, because you can learn something from anyone.
Sure.
And these guys aren't on the road, and these guys aren't full-time callers not knowing what they're doing. And everybody has got something that will add to, the total experience as you're learning to call. I still go to all the seminars. We recently, our local college association, we had Ted come in and do a weekend seminar. And unfortunately, that was right after my surgery, and I wasn't able to go, but they said it was a fantastic seminar. And even the experienced callers learn something every time one of these guys come through, or girls come through, and there's always something to learn. So don't ever give up on that formal education, but again, most importantly, find somebody that you can tail along with. I got 2 guys that I'm kind of mentoring right now. You probably remember them. Remember Big Ed, Big Tall Ed?
Yeah. Yes, I do.
Yeah, Ed Via. He's doing a fantastic job.
Okay.
He's learning. He comes around to the dances. We have sessions together, micro sessions and whatnot. And he's starting to call dances and getting booked by clubs. And
nice.
And him being 6'9", he doesn't need a stage. And then the other guy is Dirk Iwema. I don't know if you remember him from the school last year. He was brand new at the school in Evansville.
Wow.
And he's coming along really, really well. So I'm hoping I'm giving these guys some stuff, but I'm telling them both to go out and get into some schools and whatnot. And they're looking up schools. I think one of them's going to St. Louis here for a school pretty soon.
Okay.
So I don't know what else to say. I agree.
And you really, even if you could say this person is the best caller teacher of all time, you still need to see other people, because just like you were saying, I'm going to pick a little bit up from you when I watch you. Sure. Even if I go to dance to you, I'm looking at it from a caller's perspective. I go to dance and I'm so into what the caller's saying. I'm like, okay. And so I'll pick up something from you, and then I'll go and I'll see Hunter Keller, and I'll go dance to Hunter at a convention somewhere, and I'll be like, oh, I like the way he did that. And I'll even go up to him afterwards and say, hey, tell me about that again. I'll write it down if it's a module or something like that.
That's called
and
research.
So I get something and just put it all together. So I want to be plaid. I want to be a little bit of everybody, and then develop your own thing off of everybody. So I like that. And
I like that term.
That's a great philosophy. Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
I like that term. I want to be plaid, just in case you had the ES on the end,
Plaid is okay. I'll be that. I'll be plaid one day. I'll grow up on me. I'll be Pladdys. That'll work out okay.
There you go.
So,
but I totally get it. One of the things I used to have in one of my presentations, and I think Scott had it in one of his presentations, was we had the Frankenstein's collar, and we had all these different categories of what makes a great collar, and we showed like choreography, it was Randy Doherty, and presentation, it was Tony Oxendine, and appearance was Dee Dee Doherty, and we all the way down, all the different attributes of a collar, and we had all these fantastic collars. Each collar had a separate attribute, and that we called it Frankenstein's collar, and that's exactly what you want to be. You want to be plaid. You want a little bit of everything.
Yes, sir.
But you still want to be yourself, and develop your own shtick, using the tools that all these other guys can provide. One of the other things for new collars I wanted to mention is set goals. Set goals. Set your 6-month goal, and then your 1-year goal. Where do you think you want to be? Your 5-year goal. Your 2-year goal. Your 5-year goal. 10-year goal, and say, okay, this is what I want to do. Say, if I'm a brand new caller, in 1 year, I want to be able to call a dance.
Right.
Okay. I want to be able to go and do a two to 2.5 hour dance, and built out about 7 or 8, 9 singing calls, and be able to call 5 or 6 batters, and be able to do that. That'd be 1-year goal.
Okay.
And then say 5-year goal would be is I want to be a club caller. I want to be teaching square dancing and that kind of thing. Your 10-year goal is you want to be a part of the local callers association and start helping develop other callers and things like that. And so set goals. Make them don't make them too easy.
Right.
Don't say, okay, I don't want to call a dance for 5 years. That's too easy.
Yeah.
Push yourselves. And then make a plan what it's going to take to get there, and try to figure that out. Always, as a new caller, try to get involved in the local callers association. I highly recommend Callerlab, even for a brand new caller, because there's a lot of great information coming out of Callerlab, and a lot of folks that you can work with and talk to and just kind of network with.
Yeah.
So get involved in that. Of course, you want to set your financial goals too. You're not going to be making a bunch of money right away.
Yeah.
It's more of a financial investment than it is anything. When you start talking about music and equipment and computer and speakers and all that, you're going to spend quite a bit of money.
It's an investment to start off for sure. And then you kind of figure your way around it, and once people get to know you, there's always something that's like, hey, my first yak stack and all that was given to me by the guy who was teaching me, because he had 2 or 3 sets. And so that really helped me, rather, because especially starting out, I could barely get through 1 tip by myself. I didn't want to go out and drop, $300 on a turntable and then another $400 on speakers, and say, well, I'm not even calling dances yet. So it's something you've got to have a goal, you got to have a focus, and once you get into it, and Callerlab was huge for me. I was progressing what I thought was pretty well locally here in the Atlanta area when I first started out, and calling some tips here and there. And at the time we had about 6 clubs in the area that I would go to, and all the callers, again, like I was saying, every time I'd walk in, they're like, hey, did you bring your microphone? Did you bring a record? And I was like, yeah. So I'd go out in my car, because I never brought all my stuff in expecting to call. That was just one thing I would do. But I knew I'd walk in and they're like, hey, man, go get your stuff. And I'd go back out to the car and bring my record in and my mic and all that. And then we'd go up. And so, but when I got into Callerlab and I started going to the Callerlab conventions, and I went to a couple of the caller schools through Callerlab and meeting everybody and seeing, and hey, let me look at YouTube. Who is this Tony Oxendine guy? And I look up that and I'm like, wow. And you can just hear it. You can see it if you look at it, but you can hear the difference in a caller that's done it for years and has taken it to another level, as opposed to the guys that are in their 5, 8, 10 years just starting out, you know. So
Right.
Caller Lab was really big for me in that. So, and you've recorded some music also, yes?
Right. Yep.
And it's tough, and I know I've talked to a few callers now on this podcast, and just in general, I have two of my favorite singing calls. If just a hand, what do you think your favorite singing calls? If you came in and said, "Hey, let me just go up there and do a singing call," what's your singing call right now? You think that's your favorite?
It kind of goes in spurts, you know.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I like one for a while, then I like another one for a while. Oh, crap! Now you make me look at my list here. Hang on a second. Give me a second. I want to look at my list because I don't know how well you guys use. Hang on a minute. How well you guys use SquareView, but I actually have a folder, a playlist in SquareView that's called favorites, and
Okay.
these are the ones that are my favorite. And then, you know, it just depends on how much I used it here and there. One of my big favorite records of blues is a one that Scott put out called "One of These Nights." It's an Eagles tune.
It is okay. Very good song.
Yeah, I love that tune. I use it a lot. Of course, you know, I'm pretty partial to a lot of Royal records.
Yes, sir.
Only because, you know, I'm recording with Royal now.
Okay.
And I just recorded one with Shauna on Sheep called "I Can See Clearly Now." So right now, that's one of my favorites. I use it just everywhere I go.
I Can See Clearly. I'll check that out.
Yeah, and actually, she did a fantastic job on that. That was a funny story. Can I tell that story?
Absolutely. Have at it.
Okay, so I'm recording with Royal now. I've been recording with, you know, Tony about 5 or 6 years now. I can't remember how long. I've done, you know, a dozen records or whatever. And so what Tony expects us to do, you know, was Tony and Jerry, what they expect us to do, you know, on the guys on the label is, you know, kind of we hear a tune, something that sounds really good. We shoot it to them and say, hey, this might work, you know, and then Tony starts cataloging all these songs and putting them on a list and you know, as, you know, possible new songs. Well, last year when you were in your school, that's right, when you guys were down there at the Nashville school, you might even remember this. I think you guys were all at dinner and Shauna was there, right?
Yeah.
So I was listening to a Christian station. My wife likes to listen to Christian music, and we were driving in the car and listening to the Christian station. This song came on, "I Can See Clearly Now," by Karen Peck and the New River Band, and it was really cool. A nice Christian version of this song, and so I dug it up on YouTube and I shot it over to Tony. Well, apparently you guys were at dinner when it came in, and so Tony's like, "Here, Shauna, listen to this," and it was a really cool version of the song. And Shauna said, "Oh my gosh, I've been wanting to record that. That's on my list." And but not that version. She had, you know, the old, I think it was Johnny Rivers or whoever put it out.
I think it was, yeah.
Yeah, and she heard that version. She loved it, and so Tony said, "Well, do you want it?" And she said, "Well, sure." And then I guess she got to feeling funny about it because here's a song that I pushed over to Tony, and then Tony just gave it to her, right? Which I was fine with that. Well, anyway, so a few minutes later, I think you guys were still at dinner. She's texting me. She says, "You want to record this song on Chic?" And there we went, you know. So I ended up doing that song on Chic, and yeah, you were a part of that.
That's awesome, man. I did not know that. That's great.
Yeah. But what was really cool is unlike Tony, and you probably remember that, you know, we go to the studio and watch the awesome musicians there in Nashville at the Hilltop Studio. You know, you tell them what song they're going to do, and they chart that thing out, you know, the night before with John, and he charts that thing out, and then he has these copies, he gives them to the musicians, they look at it and they say, okay, we can do this, and then they almost knock it out on the first take, right?
Yep. True.
I mean, they were that good. They're that good. And then we listen to it a little bit and we put a voice on it and go from there, you know. well, Shauna, what I liked about what Shauna did is she actually sent me the music ahead of time, but all she did was send me a raw melody version, no fills, nothing in the background, nothing. It was just the melody track, and that's what I had to practice with. Sorry. So anyway, she wasn't going to release it until like September of last year. So I had a couple months, to play with it and whatnot. And so I did, and, felt like I was doing pretty good. So I went in the studio, put down the vocal. But, again, it was just nothing but the melody track and nothing else behind it. And I sent it to her, and then she went in behind, and that's when she laid down all the fills, the background vocals, did some cleanup on the melody track, and it came out awesome. I mean, it was a piece of music that I was just, very, very pleased with. So Shauna does a nice job on that. But yeah, you have to check it out.
I will. I absolutely will.
Yeah.
So you were listening to Christian music. What I ask a lot of people too is, not square dance wise, what's your favorite genre of music if you were just listening to it?
Probably my favorite genre of music is, well, of course, I'm a 70s kind of guy, but my favorite genre is Southern rock.
Absolutely. Very nice.
Yeah, I went to high school just a few miles south of you.
Where?
Valdosta.
You went to Valdosta?
Yeah,
well, Wildcat. Very nice.
No. I actually went to Lowndes County.
Lowndes County. Okay.
Yeah,
I know where Lowndes is.
Yeah, I was a Viking. But, it was in Valdosta,
yep.
Georgia.
I know. I pass Lowndes every time we go to Florida. We go right by the high school, right down 75. Yep.
That's our football stadium right there. That's our high school.
That's the Vikings, right?
Yep. Lowndes County. Yep.
I don't have much of a brain when it comes to remembering things, but for some reason, high school mascots and college mascots I can nail all as far as probably to Ohio, more or less. I just knew it was the Lowndes Vikings in the. Oh my gosh, that's great! I had no idea.
But I graduated high school in '74, and that was right at the time when Southern rock was like huge, and you had the Allman Brothers and Marshall Tucker and Wet Willie and all those groups, and so that became my genre. That was and to this day I still do it. In fact, on my list of favorites, and let me give you here's my list of favorites. On my list of favorites, I've got Fire on the Mountain by Marshall Tucker Band. Let's see here. Freebird.
Freebird, absolutely. Leonard Skinner.
Yep. Let's see here. We got Juke Joint Jumping. I recorded that myself. That's easy for me to say, wasn't it? Simple Man. Probably one of my top three. One of my top three singing calls for sure. That's on there. Let's see here. We've got a couple more. What was the Can't You See by Marshall Tucker Band? Can't See. Yeah. I got on my favorites.
That's fantastic. Yeah, it's huge. I'm a huge Leonard Skinner fan. Square dance wise also, but just listening to it, love all Leonard Skinner stuff. Yeah. And that's one of my regulars every year at the National with the band, with the Ghost Riders. It's Freebird. Yeah, they really enjoy when we get together with Freebird. I did Simple Man with them in Atlanta at the Atlanta National Convention. Yep. I got to do that with them, so that was a lot of fun. And I was telling that story, Scott Bennett, who actually put that one out. He was the one he was the MC for that hour, and he introduced it. And so that was awesome getting to do the song that he had put out with him standing there. So that was a lot of fun for me, and that it went well for me. So I was really happy with that. Another thing, just about you personally, if you can do it, favorite movie or movies. Well, probably the all-time favorite. It's funny. We were talking about this at work the other day.
And it's like, name the movies that you've seen 10 times or more. And one guy's like, oh, I've never seen any movie 10 times. I'm like, yes, you have. You've seen plenty of movies 10 times. I've probably seen The Godfather 1, 2, and 3 a million times. Probably my all-time favorite movies.
Okay.
I'm a Godfather aficionado. If there was ever, Godfather.
Well, we will have to talk Godfather at Caller Lab coming up.
Right. Yeah.
I'm a Godfather's 1 and 2 guy, not so much 3. But
three's a little bit different. But yeah, 1 and 2.
And 1 was just. You don't get any better than that.
Yeah.
I love that. So
that's good. Then also in the top 10 for me would be A Few Good Men.
Few Good Men. Absolutely. Okay.
That, and then I'm a sucker for all the Rocky movies.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen all those at least 10 times or more. It's like you're flipping channels and you don't know what to watch, and all of a sudden you see one of those, you just stop and watch it. Even if you start in the middle of it.
I think right when I don't know how old I was 10, 11, 12, something like that, is when we first got HBO. When it first came out, when you first had cable, because I was TV before cable, but Rocky was on HBO, and I watched, I don't know how many times, 100 or more, because every day I would come home and I would flip on HBO and there's Rocky, and I would watch it over and over and over again. That was the first one. So and then of course with life, everything else with like The Green Mile and my all-time Tombstone is probably my favorite of all. But that's all. I had no idea. The Godfather's a great call. I wouldn't even think about, although it's one of my favorite movies for sure.
Absolutely got to be the top. At least 1 and 2 for sure, and 3 is in the top 10. And then of course I like all the Back to the Futures.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and sure. My gosh.
I actually have 2 chick flicks that are in my top 10. One is Sweet Home Alabama. You ever see that?
I have seen it. Remind me at Caller Lab. I'll tell you a great story about that. I don't want to do it on here. My mother-in-law would get upset with me. What else?
And the other one's 50 First Dates with Adam
Sandler. You can't beat that. 50 First Dates is phenomenal.
I love that movie.
Oh, it is the best. My wife and I have watched it so many times on TBS, and whenever it pops up, I'm watching it. I don't care if it's 3 minutes in or 2 hours in. I love the Adam Sandler stuff, but that 50 First Dates doesn't get any better than that.
It's really good.
We got Caller Lab coming up. And of course, we got the Nationals in June, and you have GSI with that.
Right. Hey, you know what else I get to do at the Nationals?
What's that?
I'm the keynote speaker this year.
No kidding. That's awesome.
Yeah,
fantastic.
I'm pretty excited about that.
Absolutely, man. I'm looking forward to that. I didn't know. That's fantastic.
And my theme, I'll give you guys a head start on. My theme is dance like nobody's watching.
Dance like nobody's watching. Okay.
The last several years, and I don't want to get into any political discussion, but the last several years, every keynote speech has been about, the dance program, SSD, this and that, and just, how to fix square dancing. Well, my feeling is we need to fix square dancing by just enjoying the activity again, and showing the public that we enjoy what we do. It's been a long time. I don't know how long you've been square dancing, Charlie. How long you been?
Well, I've been square dancing about 28 years and calling about 10. Yeah. Yeah.
So you'll be able to identify with this. Back in the day when we first learned to square dance, man, we would all go out afterwards to some restaurant or something like that.
Always.
And there'd be 20, 30 people, and we'd be cutting the fool and doing tips in the middle of the restaurant, and square dancing in the middle of the restaurant, and we were dancing like nobody was watching. But the thing is, people were watching.
Yep.
And that's why the activity was growing back then. Now we don't do that anymore. We've become a subculture that's almost hidden, and we need to get back out in front of the public, and we need to dance like nobody's watching. We need to start doing demonstrations again in the malls and things like that. We used to do that all the time. or the local fairs during the summer. You know, we go out and do demonstrations and things like that. And I'm actually, walking the walk because I'm doing a big demonstration at Coney Island in Cincinnati next month.
Okay.
One of my clubs, and getting out there and just showing the public, whether it recruits anybody that particular day,
Right.
remains to be seen. But what it does is it gives us the image back. It puts us back in front of the public's eye. And the only way we're going to do that is to get out there and show we love this activity like nobody's watching. You know, Mark Twain coined that phrase. He said, "Dance like nobody's watching. You know, love like you've never been hurt. You know, sing like you don't need the money." And that's the attitude that we have to have if we're going to bring our square dance back. You know, the non-dancing public hasn't a clue what a list is.
No, not at all.
You know, so I'm not going to sit there and worry about telling the non-dancing public, you're going to dance this list and, become a square dancer. I'm just going to say, come out and have some fun with us.
Yeah.
And go to Frisch's or wherever we go afterwards, Big Boy, or, Buffalo Wild Wings, or whatever we do. And let's have some good times together and the sociability part of this activity. And that's what we need to sell by dancing like nobody's watching. So that's going to be the theme to my keynote speech.
I am looking forward to that, Jack. That is fantastic. I had no idea you're the keynote speaker. So
yeah, Tina and Tom, it was in Kansas City. When Mobile, basically won the bid, they came to me and asked me if I'd be willing to do it, and I'm like, wow, what an honor! Absolutely.
You ain't kidding. That is awesome. Well, I usually ask what's coming up for you, but we know now, and that's big stuff right there. Now, and I just want to go back. I love the Valdosta part of it. Is that what got? How did you start? What got you into the Air Force? Did you grow up at a military family or what?
Yeah. My dad was Air Force.
Okay.
I was born in Alaska. Went to 12 different schools in my 12 years of primary education, and did a lot of moving around and whatnot, but ended up at Moody Air Force Base in Valdosta for my last 3 years, actually last 4 years of high school, 9th through 12th grade, and actually I was the first graduating class at Lowndes High School that went the entire full 3 years. Because it started in the 10th grade. That's how new that school was.
Well, I never considered you a Georgia boy, but I'll give you a little bit of that.
Oh yeah, I love Georgia, man. And, very formative, teenage years in Georgia.
Oh, absolutely. And if you're looking for a place that's hot in the summer, you get down around Lowndes County and Valdosta on the Florida line. That's a different kind of heat down there, buddy.
Absolutely, it's pretty interesting. It was a great place to grow up.
Sure.
So when are you going to get the call then?
Hopefully soon. I've never ventured that deep to the south of it. I get down to Macon. I've been in Savannah, but hopefully, and I go to Florida a lot. I call in Tampa quite a bit.
Right. You told me that.
Yep. And so hopefully I'll get down around Valdosta and get down there. Call. That's all still Elmer Sheffield land and all that stuff.
Yeah, that's always been one of my pipe dreams or put it on my bucket list is a call a dance in Valdosta, Georgia. Okay. I haven't done it yet.
I will make that happen. I know people. Okay. I know people in Georgia. I will get you down there. It'll be on our way to Florida one day when we're making a trip to Florida. We'll go through Valdosta.
Absolutely. That's always been on my bucket list to call back home, and who knows, I might run into somebody that I knew in high school.
Yeah, absolutely. Valdosta.
So I guess I wasn't clear on my question. When are you going to arrive at Callerlab this week?
I thought you were going to ask when I was going to get the call in Valdosta. Callerlab, we're coming in on Sunday. We'll be there early Sunday morning. I think we're out of Atlanta. I mean, really red eye early in the morning, so we should be in there by Sunday midday.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So,
yeah. No, we're actually getting in there on Saturday because we have some meetings that start Sunday.
Okay.
At 12:30. The EC and board governors and all that stuff. we're going to go in on Saturday, relax today, but I'm excited. There's so much going on next week. It's going to be really, really cool.
Yep. I'm looking forward to that. State convention, national convention, obviously. And we didn't talk to, I've talked to Justin and Tony a little bit too, but the cruise coming up next year. Really looking forward to that more than anything, I think, right now.
We have, I'm kind of like the admin guy for that cruise,
All right.
And yeah, and we have 73 squares signed up.
Wow.
And in fact, I'm fixing to send a letter out to everybody that's on the cruise. We just sat down and finalized the schedule and how we're going to dance and everything. We have a ballroom that's 4,000 square feet. So we're actually breaking people into A and B groups so that we can have 2 dancers a night, each night. And, so for example, like on day 1, A group will dance from 7 to, or 7:30 to 9 or something like that. Right. And B group dance 9 to 10:30.
Okay.
And flip flop that the second night. B group goes first and A group goes second.
Gotcha.
Then we put on the schedule, and at least 3 nights, probably the nights we're at sea, if I remember correctly, we're going to have a diehard that's going to start at 11 night, and all the visiting callers that are on the ship are going to get to call it the diehard. And
nice.
Yeah. So so bring a song or 2.
I absolutely will, man.
Yeah, and that's going to, we're going to do that, and then we're going to have several sessions during the day. We get not only the ballroom, but during the day we get the ice skating rink, and we get the stage in the theater to dance on. And both those are big enough for like 15 squares. So we'll do some specialty dances, some round dances in the stage because it's hardwood, and some advanced dances and all that kind of stuff. And we're even thinking about kicking in some C1, but we're sold out. Did they tell you that?
Yeah, they did tell me that. Yep, I've heard that.
Yeah.
Luckily, we got in early.
Yeah, I know you guys did. But what we're doing is, in case anybody's looking or listening, we started a waiting list, but we're actually letting people sign up for the cruise that's on the waiting list if they want to, under the assumption they know that they can't dance at the regular dances until somebody else cancels and we get them in, because we just don't have the room. But right. They will be able to dance at the diehard dances. They will be able to, be with us, just like everybody else for dinner, because we're going to have our own area for dinner. They'll be able to join us for the private cocktail party and all that other kind of stuff.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah, we're looking forward to it. We never, in our wildest dreams, ever thought it would, be what this is. When we got these guys together, we thought, hey, if we get about 15, 20 squares, we'll be happy. Who ever thought? It's cool. I'm
taking over the whole boat. That's nice.
Yeah.
Or a big. It's the biggest boat there is right now. So no, you're not taking it over, but that's a lot.
We are the largest group. We are the largest group on the ship, and we'll be treated very.
And I might even get to do it. Well, that's one less thing on my bucket list. Calling on a cruise ship. So if I do a singing call, that'd be phenomenal.
You will. That's undoubted.
That's awesome. Well, Jack,
more than one time.
I hope we covered everything. Anything else you can think of to talk about right now?
No, not really. I appreciate you letting me do this.
Man, I've been looking forward to it. I really have. I hope you cut out a couple of these things and trim it up a little bit. But I'm not that good at the editing yet. I can put them together, but I don't know how to take stuff out. But we're all good on that. So before we go, I just want to remind everybody who watches or listens to this, it's on I'm putting some on Facebook now, but it's also on YouTube and Spotify. So make sure you subscribe and all that stuff and share it. Please share it so that the callers that don't get to listen to it or don't know about it yet can hear about it, because stories like Jack is just phenomenal, the way he taught himself and then became a teacher and doing what he does today. Jack, I couldn't thank you more for where I am in calling right now. You've done a lot for me, and I look forward to seeing you in about a week now. So at Reno, it's been a pleasure.
I appreciate what you're doing here and all the things you do. And I tell you what, I really like watching how you've progressed over the years, and you're doing a fantastic job.
Thank you, Jack. That means a lot to me, brother. It was great
You're
talking to you,
basically
sir.
dancing like nobody's watching.
Absolutely. That's it. That's the keynote right there, Jack. Great talking to you, brother. I'll talk to you in about a week.
All right, take it easy, man.
Yes, sir.
Bye.